Welcome everybody, Jaye Wellness here with you with another edition of the Jaye Wellness Health and Wellness Coaching 101. And I am going to talk about something that is resonating with everybody. Now, no one is abstinent from this issue, and this issue is called anxiety disorders. We all have faced this, and we continue to face this every day in our world. Specifically with what's going on right this minute, we're going through a lot of changes. So let's dive into anxiety disorders, and I'm going to talk a lot about it here, and I'm going to be using slides to kind of illustrate what I mean here. So let's go to our next slide here, and let's talk about anxiety. Let's go over what anxiety is exactly. Anxiety is a general state of dread or uneasiness that occurs in response to a vague or an imagined danger. Now, what does imagined danger mean? Imagined danger means your mind is developing what is going to occur or what is currently occurring, and it is giving this false reality of something being the worst case scenario. And we do this all the time, unfortunately. And as humans, we're constantly imagining different segments of different things, and we just cannot help it. For example, just in our daily life, we are always busy people. We are constantly busy. We have no time to sit and just listen to our body. And believe it or not, a lot of times that we have conditions that we have going on, and you would be surprised to know that a lot of what you feel and what you go through in your human body could be avoided a lot of the time. I will not say all of the time, but a lot of the time, the things that you feel could be avoided by just taking time to understand what your body's trying to tell you. We all know that the number one killer in the world, now this is the entire world now, is heart disease. We know that because it's proven that it's been shown to show that we don't take care of our bodies a lot of the time. Of course, there's different scenarios where it could be genetics, and it could be father has this, mother has that, we got it. But a lot of the times we have issues going on, and we're just making things worse. And so anxiety is one of those forms, because anxiety is like a false reality. And this is what I want to talk about. And one of the questions that I have on the screen here is, it says, how is anxiety different from fear? And I'm going to tell you exactly about that. Here's the types of anxiety disorders. And I want to go over all of these efficiently here, so that way you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. We have phobic disorders, we have panic disorders, generalized anxiety disorders, obsessive compulsive disorder, and stress disorders. Now, a lot of people that you probably talk to, they say, hey, I'm OCD. They are unaware that is actually an anxiety. And so they're not completely unaware, but a lot of us are. When we hear that, we think that that's a trait or a habit, but it's actually a condition that's prolonged, and it can be such a terrible situation for most people. I want to say a lot of times I hear, I'm OCD. It's almost like a person is advertising it in a way of like, hey, I'm kind of a neat freak, or I'm kind of just overly obsessive with the placement of things, and it's almost becoming like a joke, and a kind of a joke in some sense. But we don't realize that OCD is an actual terrible condition that many people go through, and they cannot help it. So I just wanted to kind of highlight obsessive compulsive disorder, because you hear it, and you hear it in a non-detrimental way, but it's very detrimental, and a lot of people face it and they cannot help it. And so I wanted to talk about that heavily, because it's what we go through. Now let's start from the top here. Phobic disorders. Phobic disorders are fear leads to avoidance behavior. How many times that you've had a close call in your life? A lot of times let me give you an example of a phobic disorder. It's let's say you almost drowned as a child, or even as an adult. You're going to develop a phobic against getting in water, large bodies of water, pools and spas and jacuzzis, because you had an event that became so eventful that you're just develop a phobic, completely replaying that situation in your mind and body, and it's just developing over time to become so worse for you. And so the example here is any object or situation can become a phobia. So I gave you a situation. Object can be one thing. You hear a lot of times people are phobic to spiders. They just don't like the way they look and feel. They've maybe had a close call with a spider, and they related it to the worst possible situation. So, for example, phobic disorders can be both object and situational. For example, you've encountered a spider, which would be the object, and the situation would be that the spider almost bit you or did bite you. So now you've developed a multi-phobic disorder that involves the object, the spider, and the situation. And that is when it's a double whammy, and it's completely compulsive. And so let me give you an example. Simple phobia is persistent, excessive, or irrational fear of a particular object or situation. Arachnophobia, for example. And this kind of what I gave you as an example. Social phobia, persistent fear of social situations, close scrutiny. Phobic disorder is something you don't always hear about, but it's there. And trust me, it's very well there. And it's also, I'm not going to say any of these are less or more important than others, but some of them you hear more about than others. I will say that. But phobic disorders is something that happens all the time, and I'm going to explain how I can definitely help those out there minimize these disorders. And it takes very little I won't say very little effort, but I will say it takes very little resources. Let's say that. So let's go to the next one here. Panic disorder. It's this recurrent and unexpected panic attacks. I personally will tell you that I've had this before, and trust me, it's not pretty. And I'm going to give you my own personal example, so that way you can kind of understand. Maybe it's happened to you. My most very situation I had, a very known situation that I could remember, was having this in a movie theater. And what's odd is that I spent many years in a movie theater, going to movies let's say every other month or so. I would go to a movie, and one day just decided, would go to a movie, not to see anything out of ordinary, no scary movies, there was nothing on the news that permit any kind of problems that was going to happen that night. Just regular old outing to the movies. Well, if you've had a situation similar, for example, being in crowds or being around people in general, let's just say that the movie itself, like the movie location, isn't real relevant, but being around people is what we need to focus on. And panic disorders are very meticulous. They're very intelligent. It's a reaction in the mind that loves to target common ground, situations that have occurred before. And what happens is your mind pinpoints that situation, that event, and starts trying to go out and combine different situations all together. And let me give you an example again. So for example, I was in the movie theater. There's people everywhere, nothing out of the ordinary. Obviously my mind knew that that's what was going to happen. You're going to go to the movies, there's going to be people everywhere, no problem. Well, you get there and let's say you start feeling like you're getting a headache, or you feel like you just out of breath, like right here, for example, short period of intense fear or discomfort. You start feeling just uncomfortable. It's too warm, let's say, in the theater, and you start sweating, but then you also relate that sweating could have a problem with your body. You could have some kind of issue going on inside your body. And so what happens is, by seeing the people, you're thinking that the people are going to be, what is this person doing? Like, you're almost performing an act in front of all these people. And the people that are around, they're more so like kind of a roadblock. They're watching you on the stage. And so this develops the panic attack because you start to skim around and see there's people here. Where's the nearest exit? How do I get out of this door if I need to? How do I go through there? And this is something that happens all the time to people. So I'm going to give you I gave you my personal story, but then I'm also going to explain to you how I got rid of that issue very quickly. Very little resources, did not see and I want to make this clear. If this is happening over and over for you, this is my disclosure. Of course, you want to seek medical help. But if you feel that you have a hold on this situation and you can definitely deal with it, listen up. So, agoraphobia is a fear of being in places or situations in which escape may be difficult. So that, going back to my example, crowds, malls, trains, mine was movie theater. You skim around, you see people everywhere, and you start to relate that you cannot escape if you needed to. So your mind starts to develop, how can I accomplish this goal? Escaping becomes a goal all of a sudden now. Just going into something very family friendly, very enjoyable becomes now a battlefield, because you start to think, okay, how do I get out of here? Another thing, when I was younger, and I'm gonna give all the tools and everything to this. I just have to give you all the information now, so that way then I can give you all the tools all at once. But for example, here's another example. I love to give life examples because what better way to relate to the person that has gone through this? And let's say you're sitting there right now with this problem. You're going to want to hear the outcome, and you're going to want to know what was the scenario and what were the steps. When I was younger in class, I had a phobia of being in class and getting sick. Basically, by getting sick meaning vomiting or having some kind of issue where there's people around to witness my terrible situation. I went my whole elementary school, middle school having this, just getting sick for no reason. And so these things come up and you have to know how to deal with them. And so I'm going to tell you how to deal with them. And sometimes, and let me add you, I spent many years in this class, never got sick once. So that's just something I wanted to share with you, that regardless of what you're feeling, doesn't mean you're going to be that one that has that issue. So I'm going to come back to all of this here. Generalized anxiety disorder. An excessive or unrealistic worry about life circumstances that last for at least 6 months. Now, you're probably going through much longer anxiety than this. I will tell you though, if you're not aware of what's happening to your body, you're going to keep doing the ripple effect. Meaning that you need to be aware of what you're going through in order to find the steps and start to develop a way to get rid of it. Yes, exactly. To tell you how many generalized anxiety disorder cases there are, there's just so many out there, and it's just it's very unnerving to know that there's so many people dealing with this. And if they could just take a step back and realize, here's the key here. I want to give you this tool right away. Once you start putting a label of what is wrong and what can be right, you're already taking the first step to getting rid of it and ridding yourself of this terrible condition. Labeling it and acknowledging what is there and how life will be once it's over. I cannot tell you how important that is, so I'm going to repeat that because that's one of the tools I wanted to give you last, but I want to give that to you now because I want to tell you that give your issue a label. Some will say, well, no, don't focus on it. Don't spend too much time on it. You have to spend time on it. Once you start to say, okay, I may have this going on with myself. And then once you have known or made yourself known that you have this circumstances going on, you're going to start developing a way to get rid of it. It's proven. But if you just take medication and just say, hey, that's the way I'm built, you're never going to get rid of it. I promise. I hate using the word never, and I hate using the word always, because those words are infinite. And life is not infinite. Life is full of turns, curves, breaks, and pauses. And I just want to say that you can't just wire yourself to say that you just have generalized anxiety disorder and that's the way it is. You have to realize that you're not a subject to this forever. And you need people to tell you that. You need your physician to tell you that as well. I don't care what major you're studying or what field of what job you have. This is not something that you were born with and you can get rid of it. I guarantee and I promise you can. So we're gonna go over that as well. Obsessive compulsive disorder, I went over this. Obsessions, unwanted thoughts, ideas, or mental images that reoccur. Compulsions, repetitive ritual behaviors. You hear a lot of people say, I have OCD when I'm cleaning. I need everything, spots, very shiny, very ready to go. And it's like laughable, but it's not laughable. When people say that, I tell them the same thing. Don't give yourself a false label. You're just a person that likes to be clean. You don't have to say I'm OCD because it's an actual issue. And that's what we need to stop doing. There's people that don't want this, actually. I never say I'm OCD with anything because I'm not. I don't want to give myself a false label. And this is where I'm going to tie the two things together that I just talked to you about, the general anxiety disorder. You don't want to give yourself a false label because if you do develop this condition, you need to revert to a label to get rid of it. You don't want to use a false label to acquire it. You want to make sure that you don't give false labels. And people say, oh, I'm just talking. Your mind is listening to everything you say. And you think that's a joke, but it's true. The things you embellish, the thing that you present to yourself is all being recycled into your mind, body, and soul. So the things that you say out loud, the things that you read, the things that you practice are all being recycled like a water fountain. How many times do you see water fountains go forever? Hours in a day, the water is just coming out of the spout. It's not new water, it's the same water. It's just going into the tank and going out to the spout. Into the tank, out to the spout, going in. It's the same mechanism. So the words that you say don't just go away and vanish. They're not just sound. It's sound, but it's sound that is put into the mind, body, and soul. So by saying that you have some kind of condition that you don't have, you're actually preparing your mind to resort to that conditioning and mind of thinking about that, and you're actually going to somehow develop something similar, if not the full-blown issue. So please, folks, if you feel like you don't have it, just don't play around with it. And there's a lot of people that wish they couldn't. They just wish they didn't have that. So I wanted to educate and be mindful of what you say you have or don't have, because others have no choice. Obviously, being OCD, it interferes with one's life to be done. So we need to be mindful of that, definitely. So let's go over stress disorders. Stress disorders is post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. You hear a lot about military personnel going through this, intense, persistent feelings of anxiety that caused by a traumatic experience, flashback, nightmares, numbness, avoidance, increased tension, and all the PTSD you can think of. PTSD can be present in more than just our military personnel. They can be in many different forms. It can be if you were in a car accident, or you witness someone get in a car accident, or you witness someone get hit, or there's so many ways you can develop PTSD. I just want to make that clear that more than just military personnel and officers of different fields get this condition. Again, going back to being aware of it, and you don't want to hyper expose yourself of things that trigger you. One of the things that I've heard over the years is that to get strong, you have to put yourself in a situation to be strong. Okay, so if my fear is being burnt alive, should I just run through a fire? No. So what I want to say is I'm all about developing strength in a shell, but to put yourself in a position to where your body has to work overtime and overload to develop a sense of strength is not the way to go about it. Over time, you develop strength by just dealing with things and going through them and being persistent of trying to find the remedy, because it's there. It's not always a drug. Finding the remedy comes from within most of the time. So post-traumatic stress. I know I go off on different. I go off a long spiel, but I have to, because these are all so very key and very important and very dear to my heart, because I've known people who dealt with this stuff, and I've also dealt with this as well, and have showed up on top. And I know everyone else can as well. Acute stress disorder, not one that I will go too much into, but it's pretty similar. PTSD occurs immediately. Short-term disorder, but it's nonetheless there. And here are some of the reasons that maybe you may have more exposure than others, and these are question marks, so I want to talk about these as well. Genetic, of course, biochemical, learned interaction of factors. Let's talk a little bit about that. Here are some treatments that I will go into, and these are very important, and these happen, and just because these are available doesn't mean you need to check the boxes here per se. These are if you can't deal with it anymore. And of course, if you can't, please do seek treatment. Contact your physician. They'll discuss what's best for you. Not everyone will go through all these boxes, or even, they'd have a personalized method plan for you. Of course, there's cognitive therapy, and I want to talk a little bit about cognitive therapy. In our world, in our generation, we are there. I'm not going to say all of us, but it's very common that the human core, the human shell, I should say, is the sole purpose, sole star of the show. We forget that our cognitive and mental capacity needs attention. And you find that because you have the strongest athletes out there dealing with tough and very serious mental disorders. And I don't want to get off track because we're talking about anxiety, but it is relative. If it was true that if your body is as strong as a rock and your core is as pristine as ever, you can plank for 5 hours straight if you want to, then that means that every athlete, every person that's really strengthening their body should not have any anxiety disorders. This is where I want to go back a little bit. Strengthening the mind should be an everyday practice. Every day. The only day that you should not practice strengthening the mind is a day that you stay asleep all day and don't wake up. It's not going to happen. Hopefully. So I want to say that as long as you're awake and healthy and you have your train of mind thought and process, you should be doing at least one thing every single day to strengthen the mind. And those examples will follow. Read a book, go for walks, think about the future, ask questions, like if you call friends, get your mind stimulated in some form or some way. Pick up a new hobby is a great one, honestly, if we have time for that. I know things are hard now, so we'll see. Hopefully you can. But make yourself be exposed to the uncomfortable, to the unknown. You actually are making your mind grow by putting it in situations where you have to develop a train of thought. You have to figure it out, basically. And this is strengthening the mind over time. And hopefully these treatments are something that you can avoid. So I just want to say that it's very key that we do those things. So let's see. Tourette Syndrome. I don't want to spend too much time. I am trying to be done around the 30-35 minute mark. So I want to make sure this video course goes good for everybody and that they stay within time frame for you. Tourette Syndrome is definitely something that for a while, I would say it was very common. I'm sure it's very, very common to people that are, if you know someone that has this condition, it's terrible, but you usually can kind of get through it. And I don't want to say that it's an easy thing to deal with, but I will say you can manage it. There's a lot of strong people out there. And what's serious about this Tourette syndrome is that it's a lot of involuntary issues that happen. Face, arms, as you can see here, face, arms, limbs. This is where you're just moving at a speed of light pretty much, and you have no control why. And basically, because your body is involuntary in many ways, your face, arms, limbs, or trunk, you are spilling out vocal verbiage uncontrollable. And some people think this is a joke, and it's not. It's serious stuff here. And so I'm bringing awareness that people are dealing with this stuff all the time. And I unfortunately had a encounter where there was a gentleman that contained this issue here. Unfortunately for him, you just wish you had a remedy basically for these people. And he's just going off and off and off about different things, and people are chuckling and laughing. And so we have to be aware that this is a condition, folks. So we got to be aware of this. And so I don't want to spend too much time on Tourette syndrome, but just overall, there's therapy out there that can if you're dealing with this or know someone that's dealing with this, there's specific therapy for Tourette syndrome that can get you some good results, or that individual good results as well. And so I definitely recommend doing the best you can, because this is it's a condition that's still very, very common, and it's out there. And so we'll move along here. My slides will let me. Okay, I think that might be my last slide. Let me go back, and I wanted to talk about this here. We have some time here, so let's go. All right, so this is what I wanted to look at, and I wanted to discuss this with everybody. The thing that's going to encapsulate all of these together, and they all need their own individual attention by no means, but I wanted to give you a generalized form of remedy for all of these, because I don't want to overwhelm you. You look at this here and you see 5 different disorders, and you have 5 different resolutions and 5 different instructions. It's overwhelming. So overall, I want to give you a perspective for all of these that collectively puts these into a box. And let's think of this for a minute. If you're dealing with any of these 5 situations or disorders, know this: people have come back from these things. They have. If you can just think for a moment that you can come back, you can return back to your calm and normal state. You can reverse what has been done. You can improve what has been ruined. Calm that has been very stimulated. If you can think in that form of mind, you can start making strides to get rid of these disorders or slow them down. There's medication for each and every one of these conditions, and the medication is only going to last so long. And what I want to tell you about medication is that it's not easily attainable. And if you could find ways from within to access your own pharmacy from within your own body, when you realize that your body is a form of a pharmaceutical human body of yours that's always seeking to improve, always seeking to heal. Your body's meant to heal. And if you are committed to feeling your absolute best, these 5 conditions could be not only eliminated, not only brought down, but eliminated. So I wanted to tell you that the first step into getting rid of these or toning them down heavily, very quickly, is to know that there have been people who have walked in the darkness and turned around, and they have done so much better. They have walked through that darkness actually and got to the other side. That's the first step. The second step is to not beat yourself up. Be mindful of what you might be dealing with here. Say, own it. I own it. I have this. I'm dealing with it. I will deal with it, and it will be done. That is telling your body and your mind to talk to each other to figure out a game plan. When you're in a group and you're on a team, and you're competing against someone else or some others, you form a pack and you figure out what to do to win. And your body does the same. Your body is a collective team of individuals working together. Your body was never meant to disrupt your life and make you feel so bad that you can't move on any longer. If you can put yourself in that perspective to know that your body is meant to heal, it's a healing body. You can start by knowing that the first step is that you can turn this around. The second step is owning it. The third step that I also wanted to tell you is that I don't want you to think that this is the way you're wired. You are not wired to be full of anxiety. You're not wired to be compulsive. You're not wired to stress. These are the things that I want to stress about, because a lot of times when I say to own it, I don't say to become it. I'm saying own it for the mere fact that you're going to change it, not to be it. So by owning it, it's different. It means owning that you now have to deal with this and you're going to improve. And so by doing those three things collectively, you're going to find that you can definitely rid yourself of all 5 of these issues. I know, because I am no better than anyone else. I don't have a highly accredited, specialized doctor to go to at my beck and call. I don't have a life that's so easy that I can just sit around and get meals delivered to me all day and sit by the pool and enjoy the beach. I don't have any of that stuff. But what I did to get rid of some of these conditions here was the first, believe I could. Second, I labeled myself of having it and owning it, because now I'm dealing with it and I will get rid of it. That was that. And then third, I did not believe that it was me to be wired this way. When you realize that you're not wired to just have stress, you will start feeling so much better. Alrighty folks, this is we're about 32 minutes in. This is our video lecture and video course of anxiety disorders. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will definitely be uploading this here, and I really want to hear from you all and tell me how things are going for you. I would love to know. So I am going to end this course now, but I hope everyone gets a good turnout of all of this, and just hoping for the best for you, because you can and you will. Alrighty folks, take care, and I will see and talk to you soon. Bye bye now.